Hi, my name is Ting. Welcome back to my channel. If you're an artist who is still learning how to draw but also want to create your own children's book illustrations, I got some really cool tips to share for you today. So I've been a digital artist for a little over 3 years now, and I've been able to create my first book, and I want to share some insights and some cool ideas for you to create a very compelling book, even if you don't have the talent to really illustrate 32 spreads all at once, but I'm going to show you some cool ways for you to do that. So the first thing to do is, before you even start creating your illustrations for your book, really consider the overall concept of the book. And by that I mean, think about the back cover design, which is here, and the front cover design, and as well as the interior pages and filler pages, and see how they all will come together. So for instance, for my book, I decided to do a front cover with a dark scenic design, and then the back cover, a day kind of scene, and the whole intent is to create some contrasting element between the front cover and the back cover, so that way when someone holds a book for the first time, they get to experience something cool in the front and then something different in the back, which is probably something they're not expecting, versus a spread that you normally see between throughout the whole front cover and back cover. That's usually seamless, and that's something very typical, but I think you should try exploring, doing like a day and night scene between the front and the back cover, and that will really help make your book really stand out. Moving on to the filler pages, I want you to consider not just placing really pretty illustrations just in the filler page. Of course, that's something that you should do, but on top of it, I highly recommend that you also add some Easter eggs, or kind of tie your illustrations from the book together. And what I mean by that is including some artwork that will be placed inside the interior pages. So for instance, in my book, I decided to include some illustrations and some of the background scenes for the book. They include Luna's bedroom, and she posts these illustrations on her walls. And in the filler page, it shows her before her spoiler transformation of becoming a circle later on. So it's her drawings with her and her parents as a star, and this is a day scene. In the back of the filler page, this is a new illustration showing her with her new shape and as a circle with her parents. So really tying and using the filler pages to sprinkle in some Easter eggs, or a really cool way to tie the book together that makes the book concept so much more cohesive and compelling, and can really impress your readers. So now that you've figured out your concept, and assuming you have a storyline already developed, we can now move on to the interior pages of the book. So my next tip is to consider the layout of your illustrations and creating very dynamic layout spreads. And what I mean by that is, for instance, in this book, start with like a full spread, for example, and then the next page do like a single spread, and then the next page with character blobs, as well as, exploring different types of ways to like create imaginary scenes. One of the cool things to do is to really captivate your audience and the readers, and really make the illustrations very visually cool and interesting in a way that they want to keep turning the page. And if you don't create different layouts and spreads, it'll just make it boring. So I recommend to really kind of explore different ways to create your illustration layouts and make it very dynamic, colorful, using contrasting colors. So once you have figured out the concept of your book and how you want to lay out your illustrations to make them more dynamic, we can also now consider how you want to lay out your text within the illustrations, and consider adding different gaps and how you want to add the text, and making sure everything will be very cohesive as the reader flips through each spread and pages. The reason to do that is you want to make sure the text goes in line with the illustrations that you're making, and keeping them all in a nice flow. And part of that is also creating illustrations that will leave gaps for the text itself. And that's part of one of the reasons I struggle with when I was drawing these illustrations, is to keep room and gaps and spaces for text, and keep them large enough so you do have room for creating texts that are huge and big. So keep that in mind as well. So along the same lines with text, I highly recommend for the interior pages, the font you use will be sans serif, and the reason being is you want to make sure your font within the pages are clear and legible, and you can use sans serif font, which is pretty legible and it's easy to read, and that will make your book much more ADA friendly and accessible, and you can really just navigate the book really effortlessly and make it as clear for your audience as much as possible. So my last and final tip is to make sure that you are using the correct color profile that you are going to be illustrating on. Normally it's a CMYK color profile, so be sure that you are in that mode as you are creating your illustrations. The reason being is that way the illustrations, when you're drawing digitally, will match the printed version and be the colors that you're expecting when it's actually printed. And you can start by exploring different color palettes in the beginning and seeing the colors you'd like to use before you develop your illustrations. That's a really handy thing that I did before I started illustrating my book, is to create kind of a nice color palette that I will use consistently throughout my whole book. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you find these tips very helpful for you. Congrats on creating your first children's book, and I am wishing you all the best. If you want to take a peek at my book, this is actually now available on Amazon. I'll provide all the links down below. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great one.